get by. It resides between my eyes. Walk through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the same. And right now, I feel like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Weiss here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. And this is also going to be part of the Rising Entrepreneurs podcast. And before I introduce Becky Galvez of Candor Threads, Becky, I always like to mention other episodes people should check out. And I've had some great women of EO on the podcast in the past. I've had Andrea Houston on. Check out the episode with that. Andrea Herrera, Carrie Garbus, Wendy Peace, many more. So check those out. And this episode is brought to you by Rise 25. And at Rise 25, we help businesses give to and connect to their Dream 100 relationships. And how do we do that? We help you run your podcast. You know, for me, Becky, the number one thing in my life is relationships. I'm always looking at ways to give to my best relationships and profile the people and companies I most admire. I've found no better way to do that over the past decade than to have the people I admire on my podcast shout from the rooftops what they're doing and share it with my friends, my colleagues, and my audience. So if you've thought about podcasting, you should. If you have questions, go to rise25.com. You can email us anytime. Both my business partner and I, John, have been doing it for over a decade. So feel free to ask us anything that comes to mind. And I'm excited to introduce today's guest. Becky Galvez is the CEO of Candor Threads, formerly known as Shop for Ties. And Candor Threads first started out as corporate textiles in 1982 when founder Arnie Kapp began making cold calls to sell ties. And Arnie started winning over customers and connections from his basement office. And more importantly, he instilled the importance of speaking with candor and treating every customer as a friend. Becky also, the hardest job I think in the world is parenting sometimes. So she is a mom of 2 boys as well as running Candor Threads. Becky, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Jeremy. I appreciate it. I appreciate the invite to be on here.
Yeah, I want to talk about, the inception of you taking over, but let's start with just tell people a little bit about Candor Threads and what you do.
Yeah, sure. So we are a custom apparel company. We design and manufacture custom apparel. So we're all in the B2B space. We work with organizations, nonprofits, schools, the military, basically any company or organization out there to unite and bring together the people in their organizations and groups. We like to say that we ignite connections. So when you talk about relationship building, that is my number one thing in life, relationship building. And as a strength on my Gallup Strength Finder comes up as my highest thing is relationship building.
And with your company, companies use it internally to give great stuff to their staff, or they'll use it for VIP customers too, right?
Absolutely. Yes. They can use it for anything. It could be to unite the people in your organization. It could be a gift to your donors at universities. It can be for alumni. You're going to a convention, you have a leadership conference. We kind of see it all. We see it. We see people use our products in every which way.
What are some unique ways that have stuck out over the years that people have used you? Because I'm sure you get a ton of normal requests and strange requests too.
I think out of the box, we all know people go to conferences and leadership seminars and really want to stick out. We did actually Starbucks last year, and they had like a leadership conference in Southern California, and they were like, we all want something that's fun and to stick out. One of the things I saw once was a high school kid contacted us with a picture of a senior and wanted to put it on a tie, and they wanted 100 kids in the senior class to buy it. And so we repeated his picture all over a tie, and they had 100 kids buy it, and we distributed it and everybody wore it. I guess the guy was a vending machine bandit, and they put, this little label on the back of the tie, which was pretty hilarious. But we see it all. Family reunions, sometimes they're not the normal what we see, but they want to come together and do something creative with their shields or different family crests on them. So just a lot of different things.
And, we were talking before you hit record, one of the coolest things you've done with ties around a big sporting event.
So for a couple of years in a row, we did some ties for the Super Bowl. It was not for the fans, but rather for some of the VIP people that were there. They went in a gift bag, and also the people who worked in the stadium. So they differentiate between silk and polyester, higher end, and then, just more common. And it was really cool. We got to work with really subtle ways to incorporate the different Super Bowl logos.
I love getting ideas, Becky, of products in general and gifting. And so I'd love to hear some of the popular products. And also then I want to hear some of the new things in the pipeline, because you're probably always thinking of new, innovative, products that people should be doing. What are some of the most popular ones that you have?
Yeah. So, the company was really founded as corporate textiles. So ties were the foundation of the company, which morphed into bow ties and then scarves and pocket squares along that line. We introduced Hawaiian shirts back when I started working in the company in 2011. I remember the first year we sold about 5 shirts, and last year there were 53% of our business. So I don't necessarily think you need to look at it as a Hawaiian shirt, but it's more of like the button down shirt. It doesn't have to have Hawaiian patterns all over it. It could have something just really fun, unique, small, repeating, however you envision it. But I think that's a really popular thing we do. Last year, we incorporated a bunch of new custom apparel products with socks and scrunchies and twillies and bandanas. We really are trying to be unique, custom apparel, niche. We're not going into t-shirts. We get requests all the time to do t-shirts, and we share with our partners, hey, we have a client for you to do t-shirts. But so we're constantly thinking of ways to be different. And then we did performance shirts, which is fun. It's not like Under Armour or Nike, and then you put a logo on it. It's just all customized, which is super fun. The final thing we have coming out, which we're really excited about, are custom scrubs. So we have done a lot of work with St. Jude in the past, and they do a lot of children's artwork on different things, ties and scrunchies and different products they order. And we had done a prototype to try to work with them, but it didn't quite work out. And then we were just like, wow, we would love to spark joy in children's hospitals for kids. And so we have been building out 6 or 7 iterations of this prototype. I think we finally have the material, and we're going to get ready to launch pretty soon to market.
Becky, speak to that part about how do you decide whether to take on a new project or not? Like you said, if someone wants shirts, just normal shirts, you'll say, we don't do that.
I think it's just super competitive. Like if you look around and see who your competitors are in a t-shirt world, everybody, screen printing, and they have the machinery, and most people could do that. And so what's going to set us apart? What's going to differentiate us? We're really looking for ways to be different, unique, and then still really ignite connection. And so when we look at a product, if it's something that everybody is doing, it's kind of like, how successful are we going to be with that when X person already has that footprint? So we really, scrubs is a huge market as we look at it, but no one's really doing custom scrubs. So, or if they are, it's not very popular right now.
Yeah. No, I love that discipline, because I can see a slippery slope of, they already trust you, right? They could get shirts anywhere, but they already did ties. They did, Hawaiian shirts, and they've done multiple things with you. So like, Becky, like, you're our people, like, we want you to do these shirts, but you have a discipline to say, we're not the best vendor for that.
Because we totally aren't. And I think it's just owning and knowing your capabilities and what you can and can't do. And sometimes we think we're going to be able to do a certain product with our supplier, and we go and it takes 3 or 4 times. And we're like, all right, if you can find this elsewhere, please go and look for it, because it doesn't seem like it's going well, and we'll work really hard. We've looked at doing custom blazers for one of our customers, or, custom, people had Hawaiian shirts. It was a Princeton reunion years ago. And then they had the straw hats, and they wanted the little thing, the band that goes across a hat. And we're like, that's just cotton. It's apparel. We can definitely do that. We just need sizing. And so we kind of learn more or less what we can and can't do. And we're figuring it out as we move forward.
We will talk about your crazy COVID journey. Okay. Because when I think of COVID journeys, I think of your story as really a crazy path. But I want to back up and talk about the path to you running Candor Threads, because you weren't always in the business.
Nope. No. I came out of college and went to grad school and became a Spanish teacher. So I actually taught middle school Spanish up on the North Shore of Chicago. And then I decided after a couple of years that I was going to move back to Chile, because I had studied abroad there and I had a group of friends, and I felt like I was young and wanted more experience internationally. So I moved back there, got a job at the international school, which was amazing. So all the ambassador or foreign company children would come, and it was a school that followed the American calendar. So I taught Spanish too, same way, but I did elementary school there. And while I was there, I also kind of had this entrepreneurial spirit. And I was like, hey, maybe I should import silk ties, build a website, and see if I could sell them. Amazon was a big thing in the US, and I didn't really understand what it meant to study your market and know, when it was going to be a successful product or not. So my stepdad had owned corporate textiles, and I said, hey, would you help me? And so we imported, we designed some silk ties, imported 10,000 ties. At the time, my husband, I was living with him. He wasn't my husband, but his apartment looked like a storage room with just boxes of silk ties everywhere. I built a website. It was called Silk Sensation. I launched it, and I was like, great, everybody's going to start buying now. And it was an epic failure. Nobody was buying online back in, 2006 or 7 in Chile. It was not like the Amazon craze of the US. So there I was, stuck with 10,000 ties. And I would go to stores and try to sell them to the stores. It worked a couple times, or, at my husband's company for their Christmas party, they bought 200 silk ties for me for all the engineers. And it was not a great story. I actually ended up doing a couple custom tie orders while I was down there, but the bureaucracy and the paperwork, and it's a whole different animal to be there and try to run a business. So, when we were moving back here, I was like, okay, we're going to shut down Silk Sensation. We're going to close out all the paperwork. It was not very profitable. Fortunately, I was able to make enough money to pay my stepdad back the loan he had given me to just buy those silk ties. And then I closed that down and moved home after that. But I went from being a Spanish teacher to kind of asking Arnie, who was my stepfather, hey, do you think that I can have an opportunity to work with you? And he was like, well, what are you going to do? And I was like, I don't know, learn the business, try it out. And he said, sure. Why don't you come when you move home? I'll pay you $3,000 a month, and you can just sit next to me. At the time, he was a solopreneur. So I sat next to him, and my first job was, he gave me probably about 2,000 trifold papers that we were going to send out in a mailing. And he said, now fold these and send them out. Well, he didn't tell me that Staples down the street trifolded for like 2 cents each. So I spent days.
That's terrible.
It was like a direct mail we were doing to try to get more customers. So that was my first experience, but I spent a lot of time just next to him and learning the business.
Talk about, so who were you sending those to? So you were sending those trifolds out direct mail to let them know about your services as a marketer.
Yeah, so schools and Catholic and private schools were always a big, vertical for us for the ties. A lot of them have it just as part of their uniform or dress code. So I remember at that time we had bought a list and created a mailer and, printed out little 8x11 pieces of paper and we're just sharing about our products, sending a direct mailer to schools and private and Catholic schools.
What do you do today to get the word out? Do you still do direct mail?
We have done it. COVID was tough, actually. We decided we'll do like some cool postcards, and we got a lot of return to senders because people weren't in the office. But I mean, we do a huge combination of, digital marketing online, Google AdWords, and then a lot of our business is relationship building, just building out our networks and our relationships and really connecting with people, referrals, repeat customers. We do emailer campaigns. I think we do it all. We look at it and we're like, okay, what is our marketing strategy? And it, most successful is always a referral and someone you've worked with and comes back to you and, has more people like themselves who want what they had gotten. And then probably least successful are these email campaigns or direct mailers. But once in a while you get, a customer or two.
Becky, talk about the evolution of the staff. So it's Arnie in his basement.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then it's you and Arnie.
Well, what was Arnie the upstairs office?
There you go.
And my mom at times would just help out with accounts receivable or something like that. A lot it was they would eat lunch together and she would do something, nice for the business. And then it was Arnie and I in an office together for a couple of years. And, it was an amazing learning experience to learn from him. The business, he taught me incredible lessons. And there was also a lot of conflict. I mean, it was antiquated. And I remember that he wanted it was Microsoft Works, I think. And he kept, every time we try to do something different, he'd put this disk. He was like, we have to stick with the Microsoft Works, even though you couldn't even get it anymore, right? Like the computers had phased out of it. And he was like, I have it on a disk. We're going to insert it and we're going to keep, because it was working and it was working for him. And I think, he said, I grew this business, I evolved it, and you're going to take it kind of to the next level. So we had a couple great, they were tough actually. I started working with him. Unfortunately, he got diagnosed with cancer a couple of months in. We spent a lot of time at his bedside and kind of working through that. He went into remission. I had a kid, got pregnant, had a second kid, got re-diagnosed, and he ended up actually passing away 2 months before, 2 days before my second son was born. So, watch the funeral from my
Sorry to hear that. Oh my God.
Thank you. It was a wild ride, but I will say in the times we had together, I learned a lot from him. And if there is one thing I could say is that he was an extreme relationship builder. Like I would remember sitting next to him and he would be on the call for 45 minutes. I was like, what are you doing? Like it's 45 minutes. It's the grandkids, the dog, and I was like, oh yeah, I get it. It's kind of in our nature to just, my employees say the same thing about me all the time. I'm like, hey, you got to find ways to really, really connect with the customers, and they're like, well, we try. And I'm like, first you can talk about the weather. I know it's super cheesy, but everybody wants to talk about the 40 degrees and the snow in Chicago today. And then it spirals into something else and something else. And somehow there's just this like connected element that Arnie had. And I feel like, I have as well. So it feels very kind of like a natural synergy.
What, Becky, was another big lesson that you remember or learned from Arnie?
I think probably just to keep going through the tough times. Like I wasn't in the business, but I know they went through some tough times in the recession. And I remember him maybe looking at when you ask, is a product work or not? I remember him looking at a blanket business and they maybe tried it. And it was like, oh no, that's not our forte. It didn't work out. But I think, resilience to keep moving forward, to really do what you love to do. He spent a lot of time just talking to people on the phone, and he was super jazzed about it. And I have that same sensation. So just relationships, connectedness.
Your journey at the beginning of COVID was kind of crazy.
It was very crazy. I got interviewed I remember a reporter called me and I got interviewed by 2020. I think it was end of February. They were like, hey, what are you experiencing? Our suppliers are in China. We have a great relationship. We've had, a 2-decade-long relationship with them. And they called me and they're like, hey, we want to interview you. And so they were in Chicago and they had me do this whole thing. They went to the office. They walked around my whole office. I remember them asking me like, are you worried? Because COVID was obviously happening in China. We just weren't experiencing it here yet. And so I was seeing what was happening there, but they kept being like, it'll be a couple of weeks, and we'll be back online. And so they ended up coming back online. And so I felt like we're good. Like everything's going to be good. And I had this whole interview and it aired. And then I remember I was driving, I have a mentor who I got through EO and he's in Columbus, Ohio. And I'm driving out to visit him. I think it was May 11th, maybe, or 10th. And I'm getting calls in my car like, hey, Becky, we're going to have to cancel our order. Hey, it looks like things are freezing up. And I was like, oh man, this is not good. And so it was cancellation call after cancellation call after cancellation call. I went and I spoke to him. We had a long conversation. He shared with me his experience about the recession and having to let a lot of his employees go. And that it was a really tough time. And, at first I came back thinking I was going to hang on to my employees. And then, in the next days that were coming, it was more cancellation. Everything just started to shut down. And I said, oh man, there's no need for our product. Our product is about people coming together and connecting and being in a space together. And everybody was going into isolation. So really quickly, we lost probably about 95% of our business. And I sat on calls with my EO forum about my cash runway, about what I could do. And, it took a couple of weeks, but we decided, I let my employees go. I held on to 2 of them. And at that point we decided, hey, we have these Chicago themed Hawaiian shirts in the office. I am hearing about all my friends in the restaurant industry who are just also suffering locally. We're going to sell these Hawaiian shirts and we're just going to donate all of this to buy food for the frontline workers. So for a couple of weeks, probably a month, we had this great campaign going. I had a bunch of friends who are nurses and doctors just being burnt out, friends who are in the restaurant industry. And we had these Hawaiian shirts that we had made that were awesome. They were Chicago themed. And we're like, we'll rally people together. We'll sell them, put them in the mail, and everything we get from that we'll use to buy at a local restaurant and deliver to nurses and doctors or people on the front lines, policemen, anybody we knew that we could help. So we did that. I spent a lot of time going around to different places. And it was about April 3rd when LA came, or 4th, and LA came out with this mandate. And they were like, we're going to have everybody start wearing cloth face coverings, and they should be made of cotton material. And I looked and I was like, is this where we're going? And it was that night that I said, hey, we make shirts in cotton already. If this is what they're saying, why don't we if everybody's going to have to start wearing these masks, and what we're used to is doing something customized, why don't we do customized masks? So it was probably about 2 days of back and forth conversations with my supplier, showing prototypes, what it would look like. And he had sent me his first iteration of it. And I was like, this is great. Let's run with it. And so I just opened up the floodgates. I said, hey, we can make customized masks in bulk for B2B organizations. And it was just the craziest thing. I mean, within about 3 weeks, I had to hire everybody back and start hiring more people. And I worked more than I've ever worked in my life during COVID. I mean, I spent probably about 16 to 18 hours a day in my office because I needed to be there and just navigating everything that was going on. But we ended up having in 2020, the best year in business that we had ever had, going from being down 95%. So it was definitely crazy. Also scary because all we were selling were masks. That was it. So as soon as the masks started to kind of come down at the end of 2020, do we even have a business left? What's 2021 going to be like? And I think there was a lot of fear around that and uncertainty and, not knowing. We just saw the mask orders tank and we're like, is anybody going to come back? Does anybody want anything else? So we got stuck in this place of the high to uh-oh, should we be cautious now?
So what happened after, because in hindsight's 2020, right? I mean, at that point, we didn't know if mask was going to be a mainstream thing. You took a risk of saying, listen, this is our option right now. And you went all in on that. And, obviously we saw, yes, it continued. But so what did you start to do as you saw the masks? Okay. I mean, in one sense, I guess it's a good sign of people are coming back to normal, but the companies trail that too. So the new normal is different from what the old normal is. So what did you see from, okay, we laid everyone off. And then what I thought was really interesting, what you did, Becky, is you thought of it as, how can I help? How can I give? At that point, it wasn't, even though you're in survival at that point, it's amazing that you just band together and you're we're going to sell these and donate it.
Well, I think as an entrepreneur, we're used to being so busy, right? And just so active. I don't like the word busy. I'm going to say active. That's been my thing for the last 2 years. So active every day that all of a sudden you're no emails are coming in. I have nothing to do, and that's scary. And so I think I always go into how can I help, just from a teacher's mentality I had. I feel like our company is very much like that. One of our core values is have fun, help out and have fun. And we're always looking for ways to help. Whether it be, to the community or to our customers or with each other. I think we really take that core value and take it to heart. So, it was what can we do? What can we do right now? Because we can't control what we can't control, right? Last week I went to an EO event and they were actually talking about predicting revenue in uncertain times. And they said you have a locus of control. And what's outside of your locus of control? They talked about the war now and inflation and labor shortage and tough job market, but what is in your locus of control? So I feel like that is what was in our locus of control was how could we helping.
So when that started to hit, you started to see, so masks peaked and then you saw it kind of slowly go down. Then what were you thinking? What was next that you had to do?
I think it was like, hey, can we now push out our regular, nobody was looking at our regular products. We totally stopped every advertisement we did for them. And then it looked like, oh, people want to come together and there were celebrations happening. So we're like, okay, now how do we message out that this is what's going to unify people? We're going to reignite connections and so I think we saw masks kind of start to tank around September or October of 2020. And when we looked at our numbers in 2020, 86% of our sales were masks. In 2021, I think it was about 11%. It totally flipped. So I think people then wanted something fun and exciting, and they wanted to feel this sense of coming togetherness. So then the Hawaiian Aloha fun shirt, whatever you want to call it, came back. And it was like, we want that. And it was just order after order. And we're like, wow, okay. So that's happening now, And so we looked at like, okay, this is a product that everybody's wanting. And again, it's a little bit niche because people do it, but I think we do it best. And it's not a super saturated market. So it's like, wow, we have all of these untapped customers, plus all of our previous customers, like, let's re-engage with them. Like, we're going to start re-engaging and sending out new messaging of like, we can probably put our masks away. And mask was the thing that, we got in on it early on, but everybody was then doing it. Like, it felt like every company was, making masks. So everybody had their mask supplier. We were some people and somebody else used somewhere else, and you liked the masks you liked. And so, yeah, that was kind of our trajectory.
It's amazing.
It's
It is a wild ride. What I like is even serious professions, you make fun with the Hawaiian shirt. So I'd love to talk about the military a little bit.
Yeah. So we work with so many squadrons. I mean, one of our biggest verticals for these fun shirts are squadrons. And really, they come on their own. A lot of it is just referral based because a lot of them know each other. It's a lot of actually like fighter pilot squadrons, helicopters, like aviation. And so they give us their logo or their crest or their squadron patch. And we build these fun shirts for them. We give them artwork and then they buy them. And we always get these super fun pictures that they send us. Like, we had this event, or we could, we're deploying and we want to celebrate something together. And it's just so nice to see them like with these big smiles on their face and, for all the service that they do for our country, that giving them a moment to like feel connected in a way that's not in their regular daily military uniform is pretty cool. Plus they have so much fun with them. Like, they're always sending us just these super fun pictures that we get to look at and talking about how big of a difference it made for their squadron. So that has been a huge vertical for us. And we're looking to really explore more of that and understand, how to reach more squadrons, as well as looking at some partnerships. How can we give back? They have a military discount, but also, again, we took a 1% pledge. So whether it's time, service, or product, or money, product, or service, we always want to find ways to give back.
Nice. Yeah, there was one of the events we did with Bunker Labs. I don't know if you've heard of them. I'll have to introduce you to them. They're kind of a veteran entrepreneur organization. So that's a fun one. So shout out to Bunker Labs and what they do over there. And we'll have to introduce you to Becky. Becky, I have one last question. And before I do, I just want to point people to candorthreads.com. So everyone should check it out. It's Candor threads.com. Are there any other places on your website or online we should point people towards?
I mean, I think you got it. One thing I did want to add was when I think about fun groups, we've seen a lot of increase in the aerospace groups for us. So, all the people trying to go to space, like, it's a fun shirt to make. So we've done a lot of work with them, as well as the Googles and the Facebooks and Ubers. Like a lot of the tech companies are really big into like trying to have fun. So that's been a super fun journey to kind of go on. And they all operate in their own silos. So if you work with, Google in California, you're not working with Google in Chicago. It's kind of interesting to see how none of them know they've worked with the same vendor, but yet they're all kind of producing similar products, or they're thinking similarly. But as far as finding us, I mean, just at candorthreads.com. I'm on LinkedIn, connect with me. I always really honestly enjoy meeting anybody and love talking to other entrepreneurs. Like, it's super, EO has been my place. That's where you and I met, Jeremy, but they're truly like my tribe of people, and connecting with other entrepreneurs and just, having that energy flow between you is something like I haven't experienced in other places.
So Becky, my last question is about that, which is mentors, and it could be of recent years, of late years, any mentors you've had and some of the advice they've given you that sticks out.
Yeah. I mean, I have my mentor, and he's in Columbus, Ohio, and he, took a brand public and sold it. And he's a retail brand, and he's been incredible for my journey. I think just from whether you're a $1 billion company or $1 million company or $200,000 company, we all experience very similar things. And I think he's really brought that back for me and helped me understand that nobody likes to fire anybody. On the day I have to fire somebody, it's horrible. But on the day he had to fire somebody, even though he had thousands of employees, it was a horrible day for him as well, uncomfortable. And, so I think that's been really awesome for me. And he's really had me, when you talk about how do you know what you want to invest in or build out, he's really had me avoid the shiny object syndrome. If I take an idea to him, let's really work that through. Let's talk it through, financially, let's look at it. And so it's been really awesome to work with someone who's been there, done that multiple times for different companies, and can really just help me focus on not the shiny object syndrome, but what's working really well. Let's keep doing what's working really well. And are there other ideas that could work well? Well, let's talk about them before we just kind of launch in and do them.
Love it. Becky, I want to be the first one to thank you. Everyone, check out candorthreads.com, more episodes of the podcast. And thanks, everyone. Thanks, Becky.
Thank you, Jeremy. I appreciate it.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sailing right now. I'm feeling like $100 grand.